Facebook.
All right, live. Oh, Instagram needs to be something different. You need to put it on the TV show thing.
That's it.
No, yeah, the TV show. No, don't share. Discard. TV thing. TV thing. Show chat. I guess you have to upload it from that. Get out of this thing. All right, we'll try it from here. You're right. Shut up. All right, hey guys, what's up? It's Dean. Welcome back. It's Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central Time, which means we're going to be doing a live workout. So I was thinking a few minutes ago about what we should be doing for this live workout. I like to come up with new topics. Usually I come up with topics on the fly. I like to keep it pretty organic. And I was trying to think about something that would be really useful to you guys. And as I was doing that, I started answering a couple questions on social media, and they were all about modifications for if your hips are tight, or basically that's what the questions were leading to. So today I'm going to show you 5 modifications, or five poses and modifications for people with tight hips. So if your hips are too tight to do, a pigeon stretch, or if you're having trouble with a forward fold, I'm going to show you exactly how to do modifications for those postures. So the 5 poses that we're going to go through today are a pigeon, a high lunge, a warrior 1, a warrior 2, and a standing forward fold. So I'm going to show you how to do all of those. All right, first one is the pigeon, and this is the one that I get the questions asked most often. So one of the biggest questions I'm asked is it okay to do a pigeon if your knee is not bent at 90 degrees? Now, if you have a lot of hip mobility, your knee will be at 90 degrees, which means that your shin is parallel to the top of the mat, right? The knee is bent at 90, and then I'm here like this. Now, the problem is that most people, or a lot of people, don't have the hip mobility to be able to keep their knee at this 90-degree bend, especially if you spend a lot of time sitting. So if you have an office job, and or maybe if you lift a lot, or you're pretty, let's say you're more active in the weight room than in the yoga room, then you're going to have difficulty with keeping your leg at 90 degrees. The problem is, if I keep my leg at 90 degrees, my hips are either going to be way off the ground, 90 degrees, and you don't have the mobility for it, or you're just not going to get the desired stretch. So there's 2 things that you can do here. Number forward. Now, I recognize that even this takes a lot of hip mobility, so what you're going to do is put your, whichever hip you're stretching, in this case my right hip, I'm going to put a block under that, like so. So I'm going to put a block under there, or a pillow, or a balled up sweatshirt, or something like that. And now I can get my hip off the ground, and I can allow my hip to relax onto that block. That's going to allow my hips to relax. That's going to facilitate a better stretch. So modification number 1, you're going to bring your heel in more so that your knee is at a more acute angle, and you're going to bring your hip on top of something, either a block, a sweatshirt, or a pillow, and that's going to allow your hips to relax, and that's going to allow you to stretch better. So there's modification number 1. Modification number 2, we're going to look at the high lunge. And so a lot of people will recommend that you get your feet really far apart for a lunge. So one thing that I hear a lot, and which is inaccurate, is that you should get your feet as wide as your wrists. And that should be your stance for a high lunge. It should be your stance for a warrior 2. Here's the problem. If I don't have the hip mobility to do that, what's going to happen is my back is going to be all out of position. So my shoulder is going to be in front of my hips, because my hip flexors are preventing my hips from being under my shoulders, which is also preventing me from having a neutral spine. And that's going to lead to poor form. It's going to mean that I'm not using my core. I'm putting too much extension into my spine, particularly into my lumbar spine, which can cause lower back pinching or pain. And I'm also not going to get as good of a stretch through my hips. So for you guys, you're going to bring your feet closer together. So instead of having your back foot way back here like this, and your chest puffed out like this, and your back totally arched, and your hips not in the right position, I'm just gonna bring that back foot up a few inches so that I can comfortably, with my spine in a neutral position and the proper hip engagement, be able to hold this posture. So one way that you might be, a couple ways to tell if you might be going too far into this, or if your legs are too far apart. Number one is if you notice that your back is not in the correct position. So if your back is arched, right in this position here, if you feel like your shoulders and your chest are coming out in front of you and your ribs are splaying open, that's giveaway number one, that your stance is too wide. Giveaway number two is if you can't squeeze your legs toward one another. So in a high lunge, you should be able to squeeze your legs toward one another, meaning I should be able to squeeze my back foot forward, and I should be able to squeeze my front foot toward the back. Then that means that I have active control over this posture. And if you can't do that, then bring your feet a little bit closer together. The other modification you can do here, in addition to bringing the feet closer together, is to relax the back knee just a little bit. And you'll notice that that allows me to get my spine from my lumbar spine from extension to a neutral position. So notice that as I drop that knee, I can bring my hips further under my torso. I can reduce the extension in my lumbar spine, and then I can get my spine neutral. And that's going to help with the technique of this posture. You're also going to notice a better, more honest stretch through your hip flexor, which is what we want out of the stretch. All right, moving on. The next pose is a warrior one. And I see a lot of problems with this. Very similar to the problems that I see in a high lunge. Again, it's mainly that people's feet are too far apart and they're not getting the proper stretch. There's too much extension going on in the lower spine. Again, very similar to what happens in the high lunge. They're also not getting their back heel on the ground. Maybe they're kind of resting on the inside of their back foot. So what that looks like is, if you look at my right foot here, it looks like the right heel or the ball of the foot is caving in, or the arch of the foot is caving in. So if you're doing it correctly, you should be able to see a shadow between the arch of your foot and the ground. You should be able to see space between the arch of your foot and the ground. So your modification is, again, very simple. You're just going to bring your legs closer together. So instead of having your feet way back here or too far apart, right, and that's going to cause, if you have a lack of hip mobility, or if you're just not as flexible as a yoga master, I'm not, instead of puffing out your chest and your butt being behind you like this, and your weight being in your knee, and not being able to squeeze your legs together, we're just going to bring the back foot up a little bit. We're going to make sure we can position the shoulders right above the hips, and again, be able to squeeze the legs toward one another. So I should be able to squeeze my left foot forward and my right leg back in this position, and I also should be able to get the outer edge and the heel of my back foot onto the ground, right? So this doesn't look like a very deep warrior one, but this is actually way better. This is way better than this, right? Because you can see my back is arched, my back heel is coming off the ground because I don't have the ankle mobility for it, and I also have much better core engagement. So that's pose number 3. Pose number 4, warrior 2. And the biggest issue that I see in a warrior 2 is people are leaning way too far forward, their knee isn't tracking over the middle toes, and their butt is poking out behind them. So what I mean by that, error number 1 in a warrior 2 is the shoulders are in front of the hips, and we're doing something like surfing. It looks like you're surfing. This is what I see a big issue with warrior 2. Right, so the arms are way out in front, the shoulders are not over the hips, we're leaning forward. Also, from this position, the hips aren't level. Notice that my left hip is above my right hip here. So a proper warrior 2, your hips are under the shoulders and your hips are level. So if you bring your hands to your hips, they're at the same height off the ground. To fix this issue, we're just going to bring the legs closer together. Right, so I'm just bringing my right leg in a little bit. As long as that knee is over the ankle, I'm doing a warrior 2. So even if my feet are this far apart, this is still a warrior 2. And I'd much rather have this than my feet too far apart and not be able to do this posture correctly. So a few things we need to look for when we're doing warrior 2. The first couple I mentioned, right? We need to make sure that the hips stay under the shoulders and the hips are level. We also want to make sure that the right knee, or whatever that front knee is, it should be tracking directly over the middle toes. So if you notice that your knee is caving in toward the middle, right? If it's caving in toward the inside like this, when you're bending forward, that's a good sign that your feet you're either not using your glutes enough. That's number one. You need to squeeze the knee to the outside. Or you don't have tracking over the middle toes. Otherwise, we're creating instability in the knee. The other sign is that your butt is going out behind you. So I see a lot of this when people start to bend forward into Warrior Two, and their butt kind of pokes out behind them like this, right? Because they don't have the hip mobility for it, so they're compensating by letting their butt go out behind them. So you should be able to keep your hips under your shoulders and keep your hips between your heels, right? So right in the middle. That's going to help you get a much better stretch in your groin. There's going to be much better glute activation, better core activation, and you're also not going to have overextension in your lumbar spine. Again, that's a big issue with lunges or warrior postures of any kind. Too much extension in the lumbar spine, and that causes back pain. It also means that your hips and your core are not in the right position, so you're not getting the stretch. You're also not building functional strength. So, or you're not training your body with correct movement patterns. You're kind of developing bad habits that will carry over into your other exercises that will make it easier for you to get knee pain, ankle injuries, lower back pain, that kind of thing. All right, so again, pretty much the summary for all these exercises so far, for all the lunges so far, for high lunge for Warrior 1 and Warrior 2, is bringing your legs together, making sure that you can squeeze the legs toward one another, making sure that your lower back is neutral, and also making sure that you have all the right muscle activation. So you should be able to control the posture. You shouldn't feel like you're out of control. Otherwise, your feet are probably too far apart. And then the last pose I want to show you is a forward fold. And this is why people get injured in yoga, because they do awful forward folds. So what we're going to do is use a block to bring the ground up to you. So I'm going to have you put a block about 1.5 feet in front of your feet. Start with your feet about 6 inches apart. It's easier than bringing your feet together. So with your feet about 6 inches apart, I'm going to also have you bend your knee. What I usually see, and what the problem is that people don't have the hamstring mobility, so they kind of really round their back like this, and then reach down and try to touch their toes. And this is a really awful position for your back. See how my back is really rounded here? It's kind of looks like a camel hump. We should be having our back should be flat. So you can think of a forward fold more as a hinge with knees slightly bent, right? So instead of rounding your back and reaching down, I'm going to bend my knees, keep my torso long, and then hinge at the hips. So I'm keeping my back flat, keeping my back neutral, and then bringing my hands to this block, right? So if you look at my back, it's totally flat now, as opposed to if I straighten my legs and then just try to get my hands down as much as possible. So if your hamstrings are tight, you're going to bend your knees and you're going to use a block. So I'm bending my knees so that I can keep my back flat and keep the focus on the hamstrings. And I'm using that block so that I don't have to reach down to the ground and around my back in order to get there, right? So I'm keeping my back flat, then bringing my hands to the block instead. So this is going to help prevent back pain in a forward fold. It's going to give you a more honest stretch for your hamstrings. It's also going to help with core engagement in a forward fold, which is really important. Most people don't understand that you should be using your core and your hip flexors in a forward fold. It's not a relaxed, totally passive movement. It's a very active move. You want to have your core engaged. You're also having your hip flexors engaged as you fold. You're actually squeezing those two muscle groups toward one another, kind of like I'm doing a crunch. And that way, I feel the stretch in the hamstrings, I feel the core, but I don't feel any sort of pain in the lower back. And that's what we're after in a forward fold. Forward fold is a hamstring stretch, which releases tension in the lower back. You're not trying to stretch the lower back directly here. You're indirectly relieving pressure on the lower back by stretching your hamstrings. Okay, hope that made sense. All right, so those are the 5 modifications. Again, With a pigeon, you're going to bring your heel closer in toward your groin, and you're going to bring something under your butt to help lift your hips off the ground. For the high lunge, you're going to bring your legs closer together. So instead of having your feet really far apart and your back arched and your shoulders in front of your hips, you're just going to bring the feet a little bit closer together so that you can squeeze the legs toward one another. If you can squeeze your legs toward one another in a lunge, if you have that mobility, if you have that control, that's a good stance for you. If you can't, I would bring the legs a little bit closer together. Warrior one, we want to make sure that we can get the heel and the outer edge of the foot on the ground and keep the hips under the shoulders. If we notice that the hips are going out behind the shoulders or your back heel is coming off the ground, you want to bring the legs closer together. That's also an issue with ankle mobility. So if you can't get your heel to the ground, could mean that your calves are tight and you might want to stretch your calves beforehand. Warrior two, same issue. You want to make sure that we're keeping the shoulders directly stacked on the hips and that we're able to squeeze the legs toward one another. If we can't do that, if the legs are too far apart, if the knee isn't quite above the ankle, right? So notice that my knee is behind the ankle, then I'm going to bring my legs closer together. I want to be able to keep my knee right above my ankle, not too far forward, but right above it, and I should be able to squeeze the legs toward one another with my shoulders on top of my hips and my hips under my shoulders, right? So my butt not up behind here like this, but my tailbone reaching down, my spine neutral, and my hips right under my shoulders. And then for the forward fold, instead of rounding your back, right, instead of doing something like this and reaching down with your legs straight, you're going to bend your knees, lengthen your torso, keep your back flat, keep your core just like you would for a plank, and then bring your hands to a block, like so. You can even stack blocks here. I work with people who are so tight that they need this, right? So you could stack 2 blocks. The point is you need to keep your back flat in a forward fold. So don't exacerbate your back pain. Keep your back flat, bend your knees, use the block. So those applications for inflexible people. Let's go to the comments, see if we have any questions.
Someone wanted to know about TFL videos.
TFL video. I have a video called, I'm pretty sure I have a TFL video on YouTube. So go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/manfulyoga, search TFL. And basically what you want to do is, I think the most effective method for releasing that muscle is using a lacrosse ball on it. So putting a lacrosse ball right on your TFL, which is, again, from right here, kind of like the front outside of your hip, down to your IT band. So it kind of winds around the front part of your hip here in a little bit of this motion. The other stretch that you can do for TFL, which I really like, is a figure 4 with a forward fold. So for that, you're going to cross your right leg over your left leg, right? Like we're doing a figure 4. Keep your torso long, just like we discussed with the forward fold, with the standing forward fold. Bring your hands to the ground, keeping your back long, and then start to lift your hips. And this is going to target that TFL area that we talked about. If you need extra stability here, or if you can't quite bend down all the way, you're going to use a block like this. Bring your hand to that block. Woo. Balance. And like this. Again, targeting TFL. This is a figure 4 forward fold. And this is a really good one for your TFL. And combine that with a lacrosse ball and just relaxing onto the TFL. And that'll help out a lot. And again, I think there's a YouTube video for that. Figure 4 forward fold I just showed you how to do. So, and I also have some videos on TFL in my members area where I go a little bit deeper into self-myofascial release, targeting the TFL, and also explain how the TFL works with the hips, and teaches you more about the hips in general. And that's in my self-myofascial release workout program or series. So, all right, cool. So those are the questions. Thanks guys for joining. If you're watching now and you're looking for more workouts or more content like this, Number one, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. We have tons of content over there. New videos uploaded weekly, and tons of videos to help you practice yoga, but also learn more about the postures and improve your practice. Or if you're a weightlifter and you're looking to just get more mobile for lifting or to recover more quickly and prevent injury, tons of videos for that as well. And then if you're looking for even more content, then that's all on my website through my members area. We are closed for enrollment right now, but we are opening up again soon. You can get on my wait list if you go to manfulyoga.com, and there will be a sign up for the wait list right at the top of the page. And you guys will get priority access or early access when we do reopen the members area for enrollment. All right, so if you're not already subscribed, make sure you subscribe. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. It's me and also the team. It's usually me here. Everyone else likes to stay behind camera, except for Kaya, who's over here, and Tron. But yeah, there's different content on each of those channels, so I'd recommend getting on all of them if you don't want to miss out on anything. Upcoming workshop, we have a workshop in Philadelphia on September 30th. If you can join me, that would be great. And this is going to be a really fun workshop focused on improving your muscle activation with yoga. And you can learn more about that on my blog at manfulyoga.com/blog. Look for the recent post and check out the Philadelphia one. All right, cool. So thanks again for watching. Hope you guys had a great Wednesday. We're going to be here again next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central Time. And again, we're going to be just leading you through a workout or going through some exercises or some modifications to help you get stronger with yoga and just teach you a little bit more about yoga and proper form in the process. Leave comments if you're watching this live, leave comments, or even if you're not watching this live, leave comments and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Keep in mind, you don't have to watch this live in order to do these exercises, so save it for later, watch them when you can, and then comment then, and again, I'll respond to them when I can. That's it. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.